Hello all and welcome to ManageEngine Mobile Device Manager Plus training. So myself Naveen, I'm the trainer for today and this is our training schedule. Last week we had an in-depth training on app management and device security, while today we would be dealing with device enrollment and device provisioning. For our training agenda, first we would have an overview of the Mobile Device Manager Plus product, a general introduction about what Mobile Device Manager Plus is, its architecture, the ports, and how MDM, the solution itself, manages the devices. We would then talk about how you can enroll the devices into the MDM solution, because enrollment is the first step to bring in the devices into your solution. And you have two types, wherein you can enroll devices that are already in use and fresh or factory reset devices that you hold in your inventory. Later, we would also talk about how we can push configurations to your managed devices. So after enrolling them, you would like to invoke certain basic policies so that the devices are ready to be shipped. And also we can talk about how you can prevent unauthorized exchange email access on your devices as well. And to top it off, we have our scenarios and solutions. So based on the above topics, I had gone through certain scenarios that can come up in a customer's environment. So we would go through certain scenarios and some questions that were asked during the previous training sessions. So we do have a chat team available to answer all of your questions. So you can drop them in at any point of time during the training itself, and they would be able to answer them. Our first topic on the agenda was the overview of the Mobile Device Manager Plus product. So a Mobile Device Manager Plus product must support OS systems in order to enroll them into the solution itself. So we support well-known operating systems like your Android OS, your iOS devices, Windows 10 machines, phones, tablets, Surface Pro, or even your laptops. And we also support Chrome OS in the mix. And how is the MDM solution available? Well, the MDM solution is available as a standalone solution, which is present both as an on-premise as well as in the cloud platform. It is available as an add-on with Desktop Central, which is our flagship product, thereby completing the UEM cycle, because Desktop Central helps in managing your legacy machines like your Mac machines, your Windows machines, as well as your Linux machines. And at last, for the MSP providers out there, we have the Mobile Device Manager Plus on-premise MSP edition available. Integrations are also a key part in the Mobile Device Manager Plus product, because integration helps to ease your way through the working solution. So you have ticketing tools like Spiceworks or Service Desk Plus that can be integrated with the system. So if someone raises a ticket, you can automatically open that particular device and perform actions. We can also integrate with other cloud-based products, sister products like Zoho Creator or Zoho CRM as well, to perform various other actions. We also support a common third-party API key integration, wherein the product can integrate with any third-party service in order to perform any tasks on your machines or services itself. And now for the architecture of your Mobile Device Manager Plus product. So here, you would notice there are three main components. One is the MDM server that is provided by us. Two would be your notification services that are provided by the respected OEM vendors like Apple Push Notification Services, or APNS for iOS, Google's Firebase Cloud Messaging Service, or otherwise called as FCM, and Windows Notification Services, WNS, for your Windows-based machines. And at last, the third component is the devices that are going to be managed, either BYOD devices or devices that are purchased by you. So the architecture works in a way wherein the MDM server leverages on your FCM or your APNS services in order to wake up your mobile devices. The mobile devices in turn get in contact with your MDM server. We also have a secure gateway add-on thrown in here for the on-premise users. So any request that comes from the mobile device would be forwarded through that particular secure gateway server to your MDM server machine itself. This is because the MDM server has to be exposed to the internet in order to maintain constant device contact. So in order to secure the service, we have added this security component in there. And last but not least, we can also integrate your Active Directory services along with the MDM server for device enrollment and provisioning systems. More that we will discuss on in today's training session. Now for the ports used by the Mobile Device Manager Plus product. So if you're on the cloud solution, you don't have to worry about any ports. Automatically, everything would be set and done by us. You can start enrolling the devices. But in case you are using the on-premise solution, then you'd have to make sure that the 9383 inbound port in your firewall has to be open so that when the devices try to reach the server, it would be allowed through the 9383 port. And the other ports are by default open in most of the systems itself. Now, how does the MDM actually manage your mobile devices? Well, for Android, we have the Android application that would manage your devices, while for the iOS, Windows, and your Chromebooks, we make use of the native client itself. So there is a native client that is given by the OS system. So we would make use of that, and we would manage your mobile devices. So let's take a quick look as to how the MDM is and what would be the console for new users. So this is the MDM console. You have tabs ranging from Home tab to Support. So Home tab is just a predefined collection of details as to what type of devices are enrolled, what actions have been performed in the last few hours, app summary, platform summary, etc. And then you have your device management tab, wherein you have to perform all the device management activities like pushing out profiles, basically your configurations as to what the device must do. You have app repository to distribute applications, something that was discussed in an extensive way last training session. And you then have your inventory tab, wherein you hold a basic inventory detail of all the devices that have been enrolled, along with the location data of these devices as well. And as for today's training, it would be mostly focused towards the enrollment tab, wherein we would see how you can enroll multiple devices into the MDM solution. It can be Android, it can be iOS, it can be fresh, or devices that are already in use. All the enrollment methods would be covered today under, and all the enrollment methods would also fall under this particular tab itself. And then you have the reports tab to generate a report of any apps that are already present in the device, what version they are on, devices by model. So you have various opportunities to get predefined reports to schedule them from time to time, or you can also query in your own reports as well. And at last, you have the admin and the support tab, which would be basically used to add users into the solution, or if you have any support requests, you can raise them from the support tab as well. So now for the important topic of our day. It's to enroll the mobile devices into the MDM solution. So let's take, for example, that I am under an organization called as Zilka, and we have mobile devices that have to be managed. These devices are of two types. One are devices that are already in use, and two are fresh devices that the company has just procured. So let's see how you can enroll your devices that are already in use. This is a scenario that you would see in a BYOD environment. So you have a corporate company like Zilka, and all of the employees over here are allowed to bring their mobile devices to work. So in that case, you would like to enroll these devices as they are already in use. And the enrollment options that are available in this scenario are enrollment with invites and self-enrollment. So the benefits of going for the enrollment invite or the self-enrollment option is that first, we can create a workspace, a container that would isolate or separate, I would say, your personal space from your workspace itself. You can prevent unauthorized data access. So like WhatsApp trying to access an Office 365 folder, etc. So you can prevent those unauthorized access by other applications. And you can also restrict the sharing of data from your corporate applications over to your personal applications as well. So there'd be a workspace created and all of your data would be within that workspace itself. So first topic is enrollment with invites. It's pretty simple. So the admin sends an invite to the user. The user would open that particular email, would scan the QR code, and would access the enrollment URL. This would automatically get their devices registered with the MDM solution itself. So if a particular user, for example, comes up to me and says he or she would like to enroll their iOS devices into the MDM, so all I have to do is first, I'd have to make sure that I have created an APNS certificate. So this is the first step wherein to enroll an iOS device, you would have to set up a token-like exchange with Apple so that they allow you to manage the devices. So I open a fresh server over here. So this is how our APNS solution looks like. So we have provided all the steps over here. So you can download something called as the vendor signed CSR file and sign in to your Apple push notification services. So it would be just the regular Apple ID that you use on a day-to-day basis, but we would recommend you to create one for your team itself, for the IT team, because this particular APNS certificate has to be renewed every once in a year. So once you have created the APNS file in the Apple push notification service, they would provide you an alternate token, one that can be uploaded in this portal over here. So also you can mention the corporate ID or the Apple ID that was used to create the certificate, and also certain email IDs for the notification for the expiries as well. As I mentioned, you'd have to renew the token every once in a year, or your devices would lose contact with the MDM solution itself. So once this has all been set up, you would find a tab that is similar to this. So over here, you have all the CSR details, the the email ID that was used to create the APNS, etc. So once you have confirmed this, you could go to the Devices tab over here, click on the Enroll Device option. So this method of enrolling your devices through invites is common for your Apple, Android, Windows, as well as your Chromebooks. There is no change in the enrollment pattern. So I choose iOS because they use an iOS device, and I choose through user invites option. I can also integrate my Active Directory with the MDM. So I can choose domain user, add domain, Zoho Corp, and then choose any users from the respective pool itself. So once you have obtained the details, you can then send an enrollment invite to the users itself. Or if you'd like to enroll the devices by yourself as the administrator, you can also use the by myself enrollment option and enroll the devices with the MDM. The end users would receive a similar amount of data on their emails, asking them to access a particular link and then scan this QR code in order to complete the enrollment process itself. So this is how it looks like on a mobile device. So the user would click on the link and they would scan the QR code. Automatically, we would obtain the details. We would hit on continue. And once that is done, the device would be enrolled with the solution itself. So it's just a 4-step process, or more like a 3-step process that would be performed on your devices itself. And this is common for your iOS, Android, as well as any other service that is out there. So this is how you enroll your devices using invites. So once this is done, the enrollment itself would be completed on the device itself. Our next enrollment option is self-enrollment. Self-enrollment is a process where the user themselves access a particular enrollment link from any self-service portal. They can enter their Active Directory credentials and the device would be registered with the solution itself. So here you have the ability to integrate Active Directory services with the MDM. So it can be a G Suite service, Azure AD, or a Microsoft on-premise AD that can be added with the solution itself. And once the sync status has been successful, it means all the users have been synced into the solution. And down here, you have self-enrollment. So once the AD has been integrated, you can allow the self-enrollment for all the AD groups or only a selected number of AD groups alone. So you can browse through the groups that are available and choose from the browsed list. And you can also specify for email notification once a device is enrolled through the self-enrollment option itself. So the URL that the user has to access would be on the right over here. So you can copy this URL and send it out as a common email or put it up in one of your self-service portals. When a particular user accesses that particular URL, they would go through the same enrollment process, but they would come up with a particular screen asking them to provide their AD credentials. So once we have confirmed it's the right AD credentials, we would automatically enroll the devices with the system itself. So based on what platform they are, whether they are Apple, Android, Windows, whether it's a corporate or a personal device, we would group them into the respective groups as well. So grouping is a system wherein we can automatically distribute your profiles and applications. So let's see how the enrollment process itself would work on the mobile devices. So for the first step, when the user accesses the particular link, if it's an Android device, we would install the application. If it's an iOS, since we use the native client, it would be within your Safari application itself. You then provide the necessary details over here, the server details. And once that is done, you provide your authentication details, your username and password that are synced with the AD system. And once that is done, you'd have to go through these particular steps, activate the MDM as the device administrator, and then complete the enrollment process itself. So this would automatically complete your enrollment steps. Now we have covered how you can enroll your BYOD or devices that are already in use into the MDM solution. Our next phase is to enroll new devices. New devices are always challenging because you would have to complete the initial setup process manually, and also there needs to be some kind of intervention that is required for the admin to complete the enrollment process itself. So that's why we have brought in certain automated enrollment methods into the solution itself, or more we could say adopted the system. So for iOS devices, we have the Apple Configurator enrollment and the Apple Business Manager enrollment. For Android, we have EMM token enrollment and the Zero Touch enrollment. So first, we would see how the manual process goes by for your Apple and Android devices. So before that, what are the benefits of an automated enrollment? So you can silently install applications on the devices because they are going to be completely controlled by the corporate itself. You can lock them down in kiosk mode because single purpose devices right now are in the growth, and you can lock down an entire device to run just a few applications alone. And at last, you have full support of all the profiles and configurations that are available. Since these are corporate devices, or in otherwise called as supervised devices, you can have complete control over them, so all the profiles and configurations can be applied on the devices itself. So now for our first enrollment option, which is Apple Configurator. So Apple Configurator is an enrollment option that is provided by Apple itself. So first and foremost, you'd have to install and set up the Apple Configurator application on a Mac machine because it's available only in the Mac store. You then have to connect your iOS devices. It can be an iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, etc. You'd have to connect it to the Apple Configurator or to the Mac machine itself. And then you'd have to activate the device, which gets the device registered with the MDM solution. So these are the steps. So to set up an Apple configurator, you'd have to add the MDM server and then configure the iOS setup assistant, which basically means you can skip all of the setup steps that come during the enrollment part. So let's see how we can do that. So this is a Mac machine. I have installed the Apple configurator services over here, and you see a particular device. So first and foremost, what you would have to do is you'd have to create a blueprint. And to create a blueprint, we have provided all the steps under our server itself. So here under enrollment, you have the Apple configurator page over here. And if you click on configuring Apple configurator, there are two versions. Mostly, the Apple configurator version in the latest versions of, say Mojave or other OS systems, it would be version 2.0 or later. So based on what Apple configurator version you are using, you can choose that. And then you would have to go through these particular options, like to create a Wi-Fi profile so that on activation, the devices would be connected to a Wi-Fi system. And then you'd have to create the blueprint that I was talking about. So this blueprint would have all of the details, like the MDM server details. And once that is completed, it would automatically enroll the devices with the system itself. So I would show it to you right now. So it's the same page over here. I click on create new blueprint. I give it a meaningful name. And once that is done, all I have to do now is to prepare this particular blueprint. So I would like to supervise the devices so that I have complete control, and I'm also allowing them the opportunity to pair with other computers. If you'd like, you can also remove this option. You click on next, and here you'd have to create a server where your devices would land. So I click on new server, I click on next, and now I have to provide the server name. So for now, let me just provide this. MDM, and now I have to copy paste the server URL. So this detail would be present in the MDM solution. So if you go down this particular process, it would be right over here, the MDM server details. So you click on it, it would be copied to the clipboard, and then you can paste the server details here as well. So you click on next, automatically all the trust certificates would be collected if any is added. You can also add your organization details. So I would fall under the same organization itself. So I'd click on next. And the last is the setup assistant. Whether you would like to go through all these options and set it up one by one, or whether you'd like to go through only certain options, or in most of the cases, everyone would just like to skip through all these options and enroll a device itself. So if you hit on prepare over here, automatically the blueprint would be prepared for the solution. You click on done. You connect a device to the Mac machine. It would automatically be recognized. You double click on it and you hit on apply. So apply and apply blueprint. This would automatically trigger the enrollment process in your mobile device. So over here, this would be the first step. It would be the device activation itself. You would have to provide a Wi-Fi network, and you'd have to click on apply configuration. So this would apply the configuration, would install the profile, and your devices would be enrolled with the solution itself. So once the device is enrolled, all you'd have to do now is to just assign the user to your device. So every device, if they are going to have their own users, you can click on assign user domain and then choose the respective domain and the user to whom you would like to assign it to. If it's going to be a common user, then, or if it's going to be used for multi-purpose techniques, then you can assign a common username and device to that solution itself. So you have all these opportunities for assignment purposes, and this assignment task would be common throughout the solution. So even though you use other enrollment tasks, the last step that you'd have to perform is to assign a user to get it completely enrolled with the solution itself. And now for EMM token enrollment. So just like how we have seen in iOS. For Android, it would be the EMM token enrollment. So this is how it works. We provide a particular identifier, one that I would be showing right now, in the device, which would install the application. And using the application, if you scan the QR code, your devices would be registered with the MDM solution. So over here, under enrollment, you have EMM token enrollment, and we have provided the steps right here. So on a fresh or a factory reset devices, because these are new devices or devices that you'd like to take complete control, and if they're running 6.0 and above, when you go through the initial setup process, you would have to provide AFW hashtag MEMDM. So this token is provided to us by Google. So Google would recognize this token and would automatically install our application. So over here, you see that when a device comes up, instead of signing into Google with a personal account, you provide the corporate identifier over here. So you click on next, automatically it would install the MDM application, following which you can scan the QR code that is present on your screen over here. So this would automatically register the device with the MDM solution, followed by which you can assign a user for the device. So as I mentioned, the assignment process would be pretty similar to your Apple configurator assignment process itself. So now I have a new scenario. My organization is growing and they have purchased 500 new devices. It can be iOS, it can be Android. It would be difficult to unbox each one of them and manually enroll them. Yeah. So you cannot connect each and every device, 500 iPhones or iPads to a Mac machine and then enroll them with the system. Nor can you turn on 500 Android devices and type in, the particular identifier. So that's where the corporate automated or over-the-air enrollments, I would call them, would come into play. So the prerequisites for that are you'd have to create an account either with Apple or Google. So to use these particular services, you'd have to create an account either with Apple or Google. And these devices, these 500 odd devices, they have to be purchased either directly from Apple themselves or from an authorized reseller. So the first enrollment process is Apple Business Manager for your iOS devices. So you'd have to create an account with Apple, integrate the MDM server with the ABM portal. So I would have to mention that it is a particular service that is run by Apple. So you'd have to integrate these two services. You'd have to add the device to the ABM portal. So that would be done by a reseller. And then you can just turn on these new devices. So once they are turned on, automatically the devices would be registered with the MDM solution. So no scanning, no plugging them into any Mac machines. Automatically the enrollment process would be completed on your devices. So to integrate your Apple services with the MDM solution, here under the enrollment tab, you have Apple Enrollment, which is common for Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager in the case you are an educational system. All you'd have to do is just download the public key from the MDM, sign into your Apple portal, upload the public key or the PEM file that has been downloaded, and then you can upload the server token itself. So here in the ABM portal, so this is how your ABM portal looks like. Under settings, you can choose to add MDM server. You can upload the public key that you have downloaded from the MDM service. So in step one, we have downloaded a public key that can be uploaded in the DEP service. And once it's uploaded, all you'd have to do is just give the MDM server a name and hit on save. So once that is done, the ABM server would now give you a token. So you'd have to click on download token. They would throw a message such as this, would reset the existing one. But since this is the first time, you can ignore it and hit on download server token. So once you download the server token, all you'd have to do is click on the next under the MDM page and upload the server token over here. Since it's an Apple service, you'd have to renew it every year. So you'd have to provide an email ID, and we would send out an email saying that this particular token is going to expire in 90 days. So once that's completed, you can click on upload, and you would be taken to the next step, which is device activation setting. This is something that is similar to your Apple configurator services. So over here, you can see that you can skip the configuration steps during a device setup, something that we had seen in the blueprints option. So you can skip any steps that you'd like, and you can also authenticate and auto assign users upon device activation itself, which is nothing but providing your username and password, wherein a case wherein you have integrated the Active Directory services with the MDM solution itself. So once that is done, you click on create, and your server would be integrated with the system itself. So this would complete the integration part, following which you'd have to add devices into the ABM service. So here under settings, device management settings, you can mention the Apple customer number and the reseller IDs that would be provided by Apple and the reseller themselves. And once that is completed, you can go to the device management tab. So under devices, you have device assignments, and provide the serial number. If you'd like to add each and every device separately, you can provide the serial number, or you can give the order number itself, which would assign the devices in a bulk to almost any MDM server that you have created within your Apple Business Manager service. So once that is done, the assignment process would be complete, and your devices would start coming up under this tab over here. So under Apple Enrollment, your devices would start coming up. So all you'd have to do now as an administrator is to just turn on the device. So once you turn on the device and it's connected to a Wi-Fi, it would automatically start configuring your iPhone, which means the iPhone would be enrolled with the system itself. So once that is done, it would complete the enrollment process and would assign the user in case you have activated the AD user integration. Now for your Google-based devices. So Google-based device enrollment process is the zero-touch enrollment. It's nothing but setting up a zero-touch portal account with Google and integrating it with the MDM solution itself. So all you'd have to do for the integration part is that you'd have to create an MDM configuration on the portal and then assign that configuration file to your devices under the Zero Touch portal itself. So then the user or the admin can just turn on the device and the devices would get registered with the solution itself. So this is your Zero Touch portal. So here you have the configurations page. Your devices would have already been added by the reseller under the devices tab. You click on the add option over here and you would get a configuration page like this, wherein you provide the configuration name, the EMM, which would be ManageEngine MDM, the company name, and the contact email. The DPC extras, however, is the JSON data of your server itself that you would like to point your devices towards. So all you'd have to do is to obtain this particular JSON data. You would navigate to the server machine itself or the service. Under Enrollment tab, you have Zero Touch Enrollment. And here you have the ability to obtain the Zero Touch Enrollment steps. So you just copy this particular JSON file and you would paste it in this DPC extras over here. And once that is done, you click on apply and all you'd have to do is just assign the device to this configuration. So the configuration has been saved and you can just apply it to 1 or 100 or 500 devices that your company has obtained. Once the configuration is applied, you can just turn on the device. So when you turn on the device, it will connect to a Wi-Fi solution. And the second step itself would be to accept and continue the management part. So automatically the MDM application would be downloaded and your enrollment would be successful itself. So in the last two enrollment process, your ABM as well as your Zero Touch enrollment, the devices were not connected to any machines You didn't scan any QR codes, etc. You just turn on the device and they would automatically be enrolled with the solution itself. So we have covered most part of the of the enrollment process itself, like devices that are already in use for your invite or your self-enrollment option, new devices for your iOS, which are ABM and Apple Configurator. For Android, we discussed on EMM token and Zero Touch. We also have other enrollment options under Android, like NFC and Knox. Even ADB enrollment is available for custom Android or rugged devices. And for Windows, again, we have Windows ICD enrollment or the autopilot enrollment that can be used. So autopilot is something that is similar to your Zero Touch and your Apple Business Manager services itself. So there are a lot of enrollment options that you can use to enroll the devices into the solution. So before we move into the next topic, we have covered some major ground over here. So if you have any questions or any doubts regarding the enrollment steps or process, you can raise it on the chat so that our chat team would help you in solving all these problems or difficulties that you might have. Now for pushing corporate configurations to manage devices. So you have enrolled the devices and now you'd like them to have certain configurations placed. Certain basic configurations like a passcode policy so that the user always has to set up a passcode on the device itself. Then setting up Wi-Fi, VPN, email, and Exchange by default. Single sign-on for signing into all of the applications available, and to also customize the wallpaper in your corporate-based devices. So for that, you'd have to navigate to the device management tab. So the first task is to secure the device. So you would create a profile for that to enforce the user to set up a passcode on the device itself. So here you have passcode, and for your iOS devices, you have the ability. So for a corporate-based device or a supervised device, you have the ability to either allow a passcode to be set on the device or not. For single-purpose devices like kiosk mode, it would be locked to run only one application. So if it's something that is, placed in, an entrance, so you don't want it to get locked or have a passcode, then you can set the option to no so that no one can set a passcode on the device itself. But if you'd like to have a passcode and secure it, then you can enforce the passcode policy. The passcode, either whether it should contain a simple value or an alphanumeric value, what should be the minimum passcode length, the number of special characters. It would be all based on your company's requirement, how secure your devices should be, and also what is the maximum passcode age, whether they have to renew it every once in 20 days, and how much of history can be stored. So they cannot use the same password that was used 20 days back. So all these details can be configured. You can then save and publish a particular profile. So once that is done, all you'd have to do is go back to the device management tab itself, and under or for a particular group, you can just click on that group, hit on actions, and associate the profile that you have created for setting up a passcode on the device itself. So once you have distributed that particular profile, automatically this is how your device would come up with. So it would say that you have a violation and that a passcode is required on your device. So either the passcode would be enforced on the user to be set within 60 minutes, so they can hit on later, but after 60 minutes, we would force them to set a passcode on the device, or they can click on continue and set up the passcode based on the details they have provided. So now for setting up the rest of the services like Wi-Fi, VPN, etc. So I have already pre-configured a particular profile for you guys. So let me open that for you. So it would be under profiles over here. I can search for my profile. So here I choose an existing profile. I hit on profile details and I can modify an existing profile as well. So I click on continue and I have some basic details set, like the Wi-Fi. So you'd like to have your devices automatically connect to a Wi-Fi solution. So you provide the Wi-Fi name, the security type, and the password. And once this profile is distributed to a device or associated, the Wi-Fi services would automatically be configured. You can also set up VPN services. It can be an L2TP connection or any of these connections as well. You can also have your custom SSL VPN connections. You can provide the authentication settings, and if you like specific domains to access a VPN, then you can also mention for the VPN on demand. You can also mention the domains over here as well. So once that is done, you click on save and the VPN details will be saved. You can also point the VPN to work only if certain applications are in use. Specific applications like in my scenario, it would be turned on only if Zoho CRM and Zoho Books are used. So you would automatically connect to this particular VPN when the particular apps are selected or are in use. So all these VPN settings can also be set and distributed on your devices. You then have Exchange Active Sync. So in most cases, it would be, most of the companies would be using Office 365 or Exchange on-premise services. So you can choose between the two, and automatically we would collect the username. So if it's going to be, take for example, Exchange on-premise, you have all these values that have to be filled up. So instead of the admin filling up these details, manually on each and every device, what we would do is using this configuration, we would automatically fetch your domain name, your username, your email address from the AD services that have been synced. And we would automatically configure the email in the devices as well. So the end user would only have to provide their password in order to get their email services working on the device itself. But in a case you are not using email services, Exchange Active Sync or Exchange on-premise, you can go for the email service configuration over here. So if you're using Zimbra Mail or other mail services, you can just mention the account type, whether it's IMAP or POP3, and all these required details can be filled and distributed to your devices as well. So we would configure the email service on the devices, even if they are not Exchange Active Sync or Office 365. Next would be Enterprise Single Sign-On. So Enterprise Single Sign-On would again depend upon your AD. So the Kerberos is an AD authentication method that has to be activated in your AD systems. And once that is done, you can apply this configuration either for all the devices or for specific apps. So if your end user signs into one application using their AD credentials, it would sign into all the other applications that are listed out over here, or even all the applications that are distributed through the MDM solution itself. So that's how the single sign-on solution works. And at last, you have your wallpapers that can be set on the device. So whether you'd like to have a home screen wallpaper or even a lock screen wallpaper, you can go for it. You can, drag and drop the images over here. You'd have to make sure, they are in the right size for your iOS or your iPad devices. And once that is done, you can click on Save and Publish, and you can distribute the same profile to your group. So this would automatically configure your Wi-Fi, your VPN, your email, and your other services as well. So now for preventing unmanaged devices from accessing your corporate emails. So in the previous slide, we saw how you can configure the email solutions for your system. But how can you protect your corporate emails, mainly the attachments, from not being downloaded in unmanaged devices? Because in unmanaged devices, they would not be, dropped into a secure container. It can be free-for-all access over there. So to prevent that, we have a particular system called as Conditional Exchange Access, which works for your Office 365 or Exchange server alone. So to put it in simple terms, what we do is we would allow the managed devices alone to have access to your Exchange Server or Office 365 Server, while your unmanaged devices would not have access to Office 365 or Exchange Server. So there are certain prerequisites. So the Active Directory must be configured, your self-enrollment option should be enabled, and if you're running Exchange Server 2010, you'd have to enable the basic authentication in that machine itself. So how do we achieve this is nothing but you integrate the Exchange Server, the server itself, either Office 365 Cloud Service or the Exchange on-premise service that you have with the MDM, and then we would enforce a policy on those respective mailboxes that are present over there. So only the devices that are enrolled with the MDM would have the chance or would get the access to the Exchange services. So here under the device management tab, you have conditional Exchange access. You can choose the host type. The server name would be populated if it's Office 365, and you can provide the necessary username and password. So once that is done, we would automatically set up the service with the MDM solution, and then you can configure the access policy, whether this particular policy has to be applied on all the users or only a selected number of users, and whether you'd like to exclude specific users. So if it's going to be someone from the upper management, wherein they can access the email services from any device that they like. So you can click here and exclude them alone, while the policy would be applied for your entire, employee list. You can also allow a 3-day grace period so that your employees can enroll the device with the MDM solution, wherein we would automatically send out an email invite to that particular user, asking them to enroll their devices with the MDM solution. So you can click on Apply Policy, which would apply the access policy for your devices. So how we achieve this is using something called as the EAS identifier. So every time we enroll a device and we set up the email exchange account through our profiles, we would collect the EAS identifier of that particular device. So when a particular user is setting up their email services, an EAS identifier would hit your Exchange servers. So what we do is we cross-reference the EAS identifier that is obtained in your Exchange server with the one that we have under our inventory details over here. If they do match, then we would allow the device to have access to the email service. If they don't match, we would send a command from the MDM server to your Exchange server saying that this device has to be restricted, and the Exchange server would automatically block the access from that unmanaged device. So this is how your conditional Exchange access policy would work on your mobile devices. So now for some scenarios and solutions. Scenario 1. My organization uses Windows devices. So how can I enroll these devices in bulk without any user interaction? So this is a simple case wherein, just like your Apple Business Manager or your Zero Touch enrollment services, at the bottom for your Windows 10 machines, you have something called as Azure Autopilot. So Azure Enrollment or the Autopilot solution is where you set up an account with Windows, you sync all your devices in that particular account, you integrate it with the MDM solution, and by just turning on these devices, they would automatically be enrolled with the system itself. So no user interactions, no admin perform tasks on the end device. Scenario 2. So an employee is moving from one department to other. So all the profiles and restrictions and applications of the old department have to be removed, and you would have to add the new profiles and applications. So how can this be done over the air? So all you'd have to do is go back to the server. So under Device Management tab over here, you have Groups and Devices. You open a particular group. So once you open a particular group, you can just choose a particular device. You can click on Move to Group and choose any group that you'd like. So if so if a particular person is going to move from this particular department to the HR department, I can just choose the HR department and I can hit on select. So this would move the device from this respective group to the HR department itself, automatically removing all the profiles and apps associated to this group and adding all the profiles and apps associated to the HR group itself. Scenario 3. I want to download I want the downloads from our internal websites to be viewed only using a managed app. Is it possible? So managed applications are nothing but the apps that you are distributing through the service. And this can be done as well through the actions of profiles. So here, let me open the same profile once again for you guys. So here I have the ability to modify the profile, and in that profile content, you have a specific tab called as Manage Web Domains. So here you can mention, the URLs or the domain address itself. So any documents downloaded from this particular URL can only be viewed by the applications that are distributed through the MDM service. Scenario 4 is I don't want the users to remove the devices from our management. So how can I do that? It's a simple task once again. If your iOS devices are enrolled through the Apple Business Manager solution over here, Apple themselves would not give the end users the opportunity to remove the management from the devices, but in case of your BYOD devices, they would still have the opportunity. So for that, you can click on this notification over here. So when a device goes unmanaged, mainly a BYOD device, the admin would get an email stating that this particular user has unenrolled their device. While for your Android devices, it's pretty simple. You can go down to the MDM app over here and you can choose this particular option, whether you'd like to allow the user to remove the MDM app or not. So if it's set to no, the user would not have the ability to remove the device from the management itself. Now for scenario 5. So I want to encrypt all of the Mac machines in my organization. So does Mobile Device Manager help me with that? So yes, we do. Under the device management tab, again, it would be the work of profiles. So profiles are an integral part of the solution because they are the ones that perform all the configurations. So you can create a profile, and over here you have file vault encryption. So you can encrypt your entire Mac device using a personal key, which would be known only by the end user, by an institutional recovery key, which would be known only by the administrator, or you can go for the best combination, which is to use the personal key as well as an institutional recovery key for the solution itself. So once this is all created, you can hit on save and publish and distribute this particular profile to your Mac machines. So once they are distributed automatically, all of your Mac machine, or the Mac machines itself would be encrypted. And now for some questions that were asked during the previous training sessions. Question 1, I have purchased a few devices neither directly from Apple nor from its resellers. Can I enroll it with Apple Business Manager? Well, Apple recently had provided a workaround for this. So starting from iOS 11.0, you can use the Apple configurator services itself. So remember the part when we were preparing the device? So here you have the ability to add the device to a device enrollment program, which is nothing but your Apple Business Manager services. So if you choose that particular option, your devices will be added to your ABM account itself. Question number 2, how does Mobile Device Manager Plus protect the server from unauthorized access? So here under the admin tab, you have the ability to set some user administration settings over here. Like you can secure the authentication using two-factor authentication. You have your password policy that can be set for your server machine itself. So any user, it can be you as the administrator or any technicians who are accessing the MDM service, they would all have to pass through the same password policy and two-factor authentication in order to open the service itself. Question number 3, is it possible to apply a profile created for one platform to devices running other platforms? No. Right now, you'd have to create individual profiles for your Apple, Android, Windows, and your Chromebooks, respectively. Question number 4, I want to apply different policies as separate profiles. So is it possible to apply multiple profiles to the devices? Well, yes. So you can create one profile for passcode, one for restriction, one for email, and apply them all together on a group or a device. You can have any number of profiles associated to any number of groups or devices in this case. And for question 5, so what will happen if I apply two profiles with contradictory restrictions? So this one is where the previous questions follow-up would come up. So in certain cases, what users would do is you would create a profile. Let's test one right now. So you create an Apple profile, for example. You click on continue. So you hit on restrictions. So I am restricting the access to camera in profile 1, and I apply it on the device would have the camera restricted. I create a new profile, take for example, and I'm allowing camera. I assign this profile as well to the same device. What Apple would do is that it would take up the two configurations, check and see which one is more secure. So it would find out that the first configuration wherein I have restricted the camera option would be the most secure. So it would restrict the camera. So the camera would stay restricted on your iOS devices. But for example, if I go for an Android device, say I'm creating an Android profile over here, and I'm choosing restrictions. Same option, if I'm going to restrict camera for profile 1 and allow camera for profile 2, Android would take up the latest profile details, which means in profile 2, I have allowed the camera. So it would automatically allow the camera to open and the user can access the camera application itself. So this is how we would go ahead in managing contradictory profiles in your Apple as well as your Android devices. So this would bring us to the end of the presentation. Do rate us on a scale from 1 to 5, where 5 is the best. You can also spread some word on the social media sites regarding our free training. Our next training schedule is scheduled for July 25th, 2019, same time, and I hope to see you guys there. Thank you.